Okay,
There we
looks good.
go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight. My name is Kathleen Fralick. I am a planner with our regional policy team, and today I'm here to talk to you guys about the regional plan review. So while I have the pleasure of leading the presentation today, I did want to quickly introduce our core team who have been working on this project, and they're also here listening today. As well, a project like a regional plan review includes contributions from staff across our whole organization, so we just wanted to acknowledge their work as well. So to get started, we're here today because we are reviewing the regional plan, which means that we are evaluating our land use policies and making sure that they represent the direction council would like to set. We're contemplating how the municipality is physically organized and growing. And we kicked off this phase of public engagement on May 20th when we released the Themes and Directions report. And we'll be gathering public feedback until July 16th. As part of our engagement program, we are consulting with committees of council, advisory boards, and internal staff teams, as well as outside stakeholders and the broader public. We invite everyone to visit the project website, which is our one-stop shop for all information on the regional plan review. And that website is www.shapeyourcityhalifax.ca/regional-plan. Just to take a quick step back, the regional plan is a strategic document. The first planning document that was adopted after amalgamation that provided a region-wide vision for land use. It was first adopted in 2006, and it provides a comprehensive outline of how growth and development should take place in HRM until 2031. So as a high-level planning document, the regional plan does have a few different things. The first is the plan provides policy and direction for planning at the regional and community level. The regional plan sits above the community and secondary plan level documents and above our land use bylaws, and it sets region-wide policy intent. The regional plan policy can also set up land use bylaw regulations that can be applied region-wide. So for example, with water course buffers, these policies sit in the regional plan, and then the regulations are rolled out in the community land use bylaws. It can also establish the municipality's intent to do future research and additional study. So an example of this is the Green Network Plan, which was identified as a study that was needed during the last regional plan review. And finally, the regional plan can identify where there are needs for different types of programming or opportunities to partner with the community or other levels of government. So for plans like a regional plan, we try to do formal reviews roughly every 5 years. The first review was completed in 2014, and as you can see, we are aiming to complete this review in 2022. This would bring the plan to its end horizon of 2031. The Themes and Directions document was recently released as our first major deliverable of this review. It outlines the key ideas and planning issues we will address in the review. It's a chance to step back and ask everyone, do we have this right? Are we headed in the right direction? The feedback that we receive will help to provide focus and direction for our work during the review. The Themes and Directions document includes 11 themes: considering the regional scale, building healthier and more complete communities, reconsidering employment and industrial lands, transforming how we move in our region, social planning for community well-being, celebrating culture and heritage, integrating community parks and facilities, enhancing environmental protection, leading through action on climate, imagining HRM into 2050 and beyond, and assessing the impacts of COVID-19. I won't go into detail on each theme during this presentation, but if you're interested in any of these topics, we would invite you to visit our website and read our material. There are a few key questions that we're trying to answer through this review. The first is, how do we locate housing and employment in smart and strategic locations so that growth can happen easily and in a way that furthers the municipality's most important goals? So we can break this down into two key questions. The first is, how are we growing? We need to evaluate the projected demand for housing and employment today and into the future. We're relying on our housing and population analysis and our industrial and employment land analysis to try to guide this work. The second question we need to ask is, where should this growth go? Once we know how much we're going to grow, we need to begin to assess where new housing and jobs can be accommodated. It isn't only about where these pieces of land can be developed, but how those pieces of land relate to the location of services and infrastructure. We think about how and where we can infill, where we should expand the city into greenfield areas, and when this is done, how to make sure that it is with careful consideration as to how the development is serviced by water, sewer, transit, recreation, and studying how we should be preserving and protecting important pieces of ecological and cultural land as well. As we define how growth should be best located, we can also assess that development can be organized to enable sustainable, people-oriented design. We can break this community scale work down into 2 questions as well. So the first one there is, how should our communities change as we grow? So we can define our vision for this new growth and how it should occur. We've done this, for example, in the regional center with the center plan, and we're now looking to continue that work into the suburban and rural areas. We can set out our community design objectives and start to envision where centers, corridors, and other important places should be located and what they should become in the future. We also need to assess how we will organize brand new communities. So places that we expand to are generally greenfield areas, places without significant amount of existing development. And when we build these new communities, we need to consider how development can be organized to protect ecological and cultural resources, and how regional infrastructure should be upgraded to accommodate this growth. And finally, as our region is growing, we can turn our minds to planning for the long term. Our ideas about the future, about what the future may look like, could change drastically over the next few decades. Factors such as immigration, climate change, social movements, and pandemics, as we've learned recently, can all impact how we plan our communities. Now that the regional plan is nearing the end of its lifespan, and our population growth has doubled since the last regional plan review, it's time to begin thinking about what we want HRM to look like well into the future. So this slide provides our key contact information. We're happy to answer any questions and take comments from you today. As I mentioned, myself and members of our team are here to listen. We've also been suggesting to committees that if you'd like, you're welcome to take some time and submit a letter to us with additional comments after this meeting. And we also encourage all of the members of the committee, if you are interested in submitting comments yourselves individually, you're certainly welcome to via our website or by email or by phone. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion.
Okay, Kathleen, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm going to go through the list. I think we were having a bit of trouble with some noisiness on your audio, but we could read along, so it was just sort of
Okay.
I don't know how to describe it, not being a technician, but it was just a little bit garbled. Yeah, but it's yeah, we could read along. So now I'm going to go through the list, and if anyone has any questions to ask Kathleen, I guess she will be prepared to answer as best she can. And we'll start with Jordan. Any questions or comments you want to make on the presentation and what's going to happen?
No questions for me. No, I thought the presentation was good. Explained everything pretty clearly, and yeah, hope people take the opportunity to comment and give feedback.
Okay, thank you. Gina, you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, no, actually your presentation was good. I just hope people come out and give their input, because this is the time to do it, especially with the changes. I'm in between the urban and rural areas. So yeah, this is the time to have some of those changes that we want to flip us over into the next 20 or so years. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Jacqueline Levere.
Thank you very much, Kathleen, for your presentation. I'm trying to wrap my mind around, I know there's changes coming, there's another consultation coming. I'm getting the gist that I'm trying to balance what the regional plan is, and when we listen to people and they do not want what the regional plan wants, they just want what they want in their neighborhood. I'm just trying to see what the city, how do we grapple with, the needs of a few with the needs of many. The idea of intensification is one that is very close to my heart in terms of climate and everything, the environment and everything we're doing, and trying to find ways to answer to the needs of our community and our city. But it's going to upset people, and it's going to have people have to compromise somewhere along the way. And I'm just trying to see if you've had those discussions as employees to kind of help us grapple with that when we try to explain to communities why we need to have a balance between what we want as a homeowner in our community and what is best for the city.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, that is very much the million-dollar question. I think as planners, a lot of our job is really just trying to work through all of the competing priorities that everybody has. And certainly, I think at this point, we've sort of laid out through the themes and directions document what our thoughts are as to where we think things should be going. And this is all based on the priority plans that we've completed. So like the Green Network Plan, Halifax, the IMP, all of those different plans are informing how we're moving forward. So we've sort of outlined what we think, and now we're trying to get those thoughts and from other members of the community and sort of figure out where we land on things. And that's sort of going to be our job for the next little bit, few months for sure. I think that, as we move forward, we're making a point of being very clear about how we have considered everybody's comments. But at the end of the day, we get competing comments from just individual people as well. So certainly it's a balance of priorities. Our goal is to be as guided by our priorities plans, which have already been approved by council, as possible. But obviously still happy to listen and to learn from the residents in our community. And we'll be bringing that forward. Very fortunately, we're not actually the decision makers, that's council. So that's a better question for Councillor Gammon.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I'll now go to Councillor Gammon for her comments and questions.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Kathleen, for a nice presentation. I've listened to a couple of people on the team now make presentations on the themes and directions, and following up on Jacqueline's comment, which is like spot on. This is about building better, and as we move forward, and the lessons of the past. But I think that one of the bigger challenges that we're going to see is some people want us to look back and say, how are you going to resolve some of the issues of the past, right? So there's some decisions that were made because the regional plan no longer fit, which is why we're doing it again. So trying to figure out that harmony between building better for our future, but also really looking to say, where have we not done well in the past? And how are we also going to bring that into the regional plan? So, in some ways, I'm thinking it's a big job for us to figure this piece out. And just my compliments to this team, to be honest. Everything I've read so far, every presentation seems to be, really well balanced. Like the sense of awareness that everybody has about, what people need and what people want changed, all of that kind of stuff. It seems to be all there. And Jacqueline is so right. Some people are going to be pleased with this and some people are really not, right? So it's about figuring that out. But I will say, suburban and rurally, I do think that there's a lot of attention needs to be spent on how do we resolve a lack of infrastructure, a lack of planning, right? So building better is beautiful, but people are going to say, wait now, we've put up with all of this for a long time now. And so you're building better, but what are you going to do about us? So it's just something that I keep in my consciousness at every meeting that we're at right now. And so it's more a comment and not a question, because I really believe that this team has done an exceptional job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then it's only me left, and I just have one question. How long is it going to take to change it after we get it in place? Because it seems like every time there's a plan put in place, 2 weeks later, somebody wants it to be changed. And that has always been a thing that I have had a problem with. Planning isn't for today and it isn't for tomorrow. It's for 20 years down the road if we're really good at it. And it never seems to work that way for us. And that's just a comment. It's not a question. It's maybe a little bit of a complaint, but we'll see how it works. Okay. And I do thank you very, very much for your presentation. And it's something that we're all going to be watching closely, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we will move along now to the case number. This is 7.1.2, case number 21639, the Murchison Drive Master Plan, Murchison Drive and Highway 101 interchange in Middle Sackville. The presentation, Shane Vipond will be doing the presentation for us. So
okay, I'll try to share my screen here.
Oh, you should be able to.
So this presentation actually is appropriate following the regional plan presentation.
I'm
that,
somehow it's got my video up here, Shane. It's not yours. I don't know why. No, I see a picture of me.
Oh, let me retry that then.
Yeah, please.
I'll stop sharing and I'll try it again.
I mean, you know, well.
Always fun.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at you now. I should be able to share.
Yeah.
So, Shane, when you're sharing, it should give you the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint application is the one that you should be selecting to share when you.
It didn't come up on my options to share.
All right.
So can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it now. You just need to full screen it.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
You can also, once you start doing the full screen, the Zoom thing there, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, a little bump, not major. So this is an appropriate presentation following the regional plan discussion or presentation that we just heard, because there are obviously some elements that overlap. Well, obviously the regional plan and that process governs all of it, all of what we do. But this is specifically about the phase 1 of the Murchison Drive Master Plan, the origin of which is regional plan policy. And what we're trying to do is gear up for a public information meeting. Hopefully that'll happen sometime in August. So the decision was, when do we get before this committee to prepare you as hosts for that eventuality, and sort of have the dialogue about what the meeting will be all about. I think what we'll do later, once we have that public information meeting, is come back to this committee, answer any questions that the public may have, or that the committee may have regarding that public information meeting, and then search for or ask for a recommendation on the phase 1 proposal. So this is really preparation for that. It's a knowledge-based issue, but it won't be the last time that you hear from us regarding phase 1. So anyway, we'll start but with some information about all of this. So as you know, this issue with respect to phase 1 is the growth management policies that apply to Indigo Shores, or otherwise known as McCabe Lake North. Now, you will remember that the entirety of McCabe Lake, inclusive of all of the other parcels, comprise the Marston Drive Master Plan. And so there are portions of growth management or the growth management policies that apply to McCabe Lake, as roughly shown here. That's somewhat changed from because there have been approvals since this map was created, but it gives you the general location of where the development within McCabe Lake has to pertain or is restricted by growth management policies. So going back to, and this was part of the discussion in terms of the regional plan, this whole issue of sustainability and looking at strategic growth and understanding the origin of non-strategic development was the basis for growth management. And this occurred, well, it really started earlier than 1999. Because it was realized that there was a lot of sprawl. There was leapfrogging development that was occurring outside the service boundary into the rural area, where you would have a development, a subdivision, if you would, on one parcel, then abutting that would be no development. Then 2 parcels down, you would see another development. And so when you think about the amount of road and the number of services, I mean, once those roads become publicly dedicated in a plan of subdivision, then HRM is obliged to service them. They're obliged to maintain them. There's garbage pickup and mail delivery and all of the services that are required. So back in '99, it was realized, and I think, and that was really the basis where the municipality looked at this, studied it, and said, well, we know that there is an issue here and that we're not doing this sustainably. And so they applied what are known as interim growth management measures. And those measures were put into the various community plans as isolated policies that spoke to certain restrictions on roads and other things. And so this went along for a number of years while staff were looking at this issue more in depth and trying to come up with a way that would make this policy more comprehensive. And so there were a number of strategies that were employed, and that was brought through to the passage of the 2006 regional plan. So that's when the 2006 regional plan is when they employed the strategies and they made the changes to the regional subdivision bylaw to try to stem this growth and try to, at that time, the growth center paradigm was employed, and it really was about driving growth to these centers and trying to restrict growth outside of it so that the whole process would be more strategic and more efficient. So, of course, McCabe Lake North was one of these areas where one of the growth management strategies was applied, and that was a restriction to develop not more than 25 lots per calendar year. So there are a number of other devices, if you will, with respect to growth management, but I won't go into all of them because they don't pertain to McCabe Lake North and because they may dilute the discussion, but certainly I can at some point do a comprehensive presentation on growth management if that is what's requested. So at this point, as of 2020, there's approximately 180 lots left within McCabe Lake North that are guided by or regulated by the growth management area policies. And the question before this committee and throughout this process is whether or not those policies should be lifted. So again, just to restate, this is phase 1 of 3 phases of the master plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So just in terms of the actual layout here, you can see the purple. In the purple area, that's actually known as Phase 5 in the McCabe North subdivision. And it has just received a subdivision approval to relot. And the bulk, and obviously you can see the bulk remainder of the lots are located in this area. In the orange, there are some lots that are being relotted that also are included in the restriction in that 180 plus. And I believe in the blue, these lots have already been dedicated under the 25 lot restriction for 2020. So they've been allocated for 2020. So now just showing you another phase of it. So the yellow is yellow, and the future Phase 5 are principally what we're talking about in terms of lifting the growth management policies. So when we look to the regional plan S9, when we initiated the planning process, when we asked council to initiate it, right, we're looking at what are the specific targets, what is the potential of creating growth within this growth center, why is there an opportunity to create detailed design policies and identify a population target. Well, we already have a known quantity with respect to the subdivision approval, because that would not be changed as a result of the master plan. That is an as of right process. The only thing that would change in terms of the number of units is how many can come on stream in a given year. But the overall density, the overall number of lots, and the overall population, as we understand it, would remain consistent with the as of right approvals. So that's a permit-based issue. So we have a strong understanding about what the population will be, what the trip counts would be utilizing Murchison Drive, and what that impact might be to the future study of the other quadrants that comprise the master plan. So you can see that within policy S9, these are reiterated within sub B and sub C, where we can answer and speak to this criteria by way of the conditions that are set within Murchison Drive and within its surroundings to comprise a coordinated and strategic master plan. So I talked to you a bit about how this was employed, the growth management. We'll say that it was adopted in 2006, and I talked to you about the sprawl being the major concern because of the costs to the municipality and the strategic growth. But I think the thing that was important to note is what we did have was we had a lot of, once the rural developers could see that that management was coming in the form of regulation in 2006, then there were there were a lot of submissions, large-scale subdivision applications that they got into the door and that received concept approval, and these subdivision approvals were effectively grandfathered so that they could be processed under the old rules. And certainly that was the case with many. So you see out there now, there are many subdivisions that have this. Not many have developed, and they can't develop because of the 25-year restriction. There are many issues and criteria with respect to this. It doesn't mean that I should restate they can develop. The question is whether or not it's financially feasible to do so. So it has had an impact, this growth management, at least in terms of these pre-existing subdivisions that I'm referring to. But so, as you know, Indigo Shores is certainly one of those grandfather concept subdivisions. And as I mentioned, 180 plus lots remain. So the build out, if the growth management policy were left in place, would be something in the, would be 7 or 8 years, probably, something like that. Depending upon how the final subdivision approval looks and the actual number of lots that that are in place at the time. So now we move to the question of, well, what are the considerations to removing the growth management policies? And so we look to, what is the planning decision? What are the infrastructure decisions? What is the policy perspective in terms of growth management, and in particular, McCabe North within its specific context? And so we look to whether or not what the impacts might be to Marsden Drive, and we're not talking about the impacts of the subdivision approval to the right-of-way per se. It's more about, if you remove the growth control and allow all of these lots to come on stream in the next 2 years, for example, are there any undue impacts? Because you know that they already have as of right approval. They already have the approval for the whole thing. It's just a question of what is the timing, and why is that? Why and what value does the growth management policy have? So are we meeting the original objectives of the growth management policy, leaving it in place? These are questions that we ask ourselves. So now we're looking at whether or not we're trying to support residential density and growth adjacent to the highway interchange. It is in the growth center. Would there be the potential for the congestion to alternative transportation routes? Well, we know that the Marsden Drive extension, which was planned through to Lucasville Road, has been pushed back. So it's been pushed back in terms of priority, and is landing. It's sure not to be developed within the medium to long term. So and that has been indicated by way of the budgetary consideration. So there is only one outlet for these lands, and that is to the interchange. So there would not be a burden on alternative transportation routes, because there are none. So one of the concerns about that, and why I'm making an issue of that, is because there has been a lot of focus on overloading transportation routes as a result of non-strategic development. And in this case, that condition doesn't exist. So then what is unique about the regional plan policy relative to this particular growth center? Well, one thing about this is we've had the process initiated. And why is that appropriate? Why is that important? Because there are other growth management policy areas that are within growth centers that have pre-approved subdivision approvals. There are not many that have all of those characteristics, but this is the only one that's been initiated by council as part of a secondary planning process. So that's a really important distinction. The master plan is a secondary planning process. So it has, under the authority of the regional plan, the ability to move forward under consideration for study. No other circumstance in the municipality where you have a rural growth center with pre-existing subdivision approval, the concept approval I spoke of earlier, and limited by growth management, is there an initiated planning process. So I know that's a lot of information. We can speak about that more comprehensively after the presentation, but I want to make sure that you understand that this is a fairly unique situation. So then the questions that we ask, these are considerations. Is the removal of the growth management policies here going to impact local conditions? Can the road connections to Martinson Drive be demonstrated to adequately manage this traffic load? If we remove the growth management and we say, well, you can develop in the next 2 years all of your remaining lots, what impact is that going to have to the right-of-way, as opposed to waiting 7 years, for example? And that's really the distinction. And finally, will this promote similar requests from other developers with similar conditions? Well, I think I just went through and explained why this is unique. And there really isn't other situations unless council chooses to initiate a secondary planning program on one of these growth centers. And if they do that, then they would be confronted with this question as well. So next steps in the process are to look for and firm up a public information date for phase 1, likely sometime in August. Obviously, phase 1 will rest with and will be this committee's purview, well, within the purview of this committee. So we will be looking for a recommendation from this committee for that. The report going forward seeks to strike a subcommittee to deal with phases 2 and 3, primarily because this is a time-consuming process and it will take up probably too much of the PAC agenda. So it was thought that it was better to move it outside of the Northwest PAC. So we will be contacting members of Northwest PAC to see if they want to be involved in that. And you will be our first pick. And if, depending on that outcome, we may look to others in the community. So that's kind of where it stands now. Right now, we've got that report in front of council. We're hopeful that it will we'll get to regional sometime this month, hopefully, but hopefully, certainly before the end of the summer, I would hope. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions, by all means, you can ask.
So, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Shane. And we will go back to my list here and ask for questions and comments. We'll begin with Jacqueline Levere. Do you have any questions or comments for Shane at this moment?
I guess my question would be, you ask the questions as the questions that should be asked. Do you have an opinion on those questions as a planner, in terms of traffic, in terms of what impact? I mean, you've given some of that, but I'd like to just give us, I guess, a better, I'm kind of understanding that we think we could move forward with taking out that condition to allow those lots to be developed more quickly because of the need for housing. Am I understanding that correctly?
Okay, so through you, Madam Chair, it isn't specifically the need for housing, although to be quite honest, we understand that as a huge issue, and but it's more what is the rationale to keep it in place, given that it has this special status as a study area. So what are the original goals of growth management, and is this site appropriately, does it still meet the original goals assigned as part of the application of the growth management policies back in 2006? And one could argue that when you look at all of the reasons why it applied, it was covered under this restriction or this regulation. going forward, we know that like we studied all the infrastructure, we've looked at it, we've got traffic studies back. We have to make a decision from a planning perspective, and it's too soon yet because we haven't gone out to the public. So I just want to put that out because we're going to be coming back to you and making a recommendation. But when we look at all of the constituent pieces, the impact of Marston Drive, the impact to bringing those lands on stream more quickly, the potential for other developers to ask for and receive potential relief in terms of this restriction, and the impact of growth management in general. Then we look to those and, we're checking the boxes, I would say. But I don't want to presuppose anything until we get before the public and hear what they have to say. That being said, from a technical review standpoint, it appears that we don't have that many constraints.
Okay, that good for you, Jacqueline? Okay, we will then move along to Gina Jones-Wilson.
The only question I had, concerns I would be the infrastructure. If like all of those were to come online at the same time, is the city ready? Is the city ready for that? Because 183 lots, that's a lot more cars, a lot more congestion. So yeah, spreading it out kind of, but it seems to have worked for quite a few years. So, and yeah, would you get a snowball effect of other? Yeah, I have a concern about that because yeah, that's where my concern lies. That it seems like it has worked for these last how many years they've been doing this. I mean, with only having 183 left, I'm not sure why it's become an issue at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you asking me to respond to that, or are you just making a statement? A statement. I think
so.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Gina. And Jordan.
No questions for me. I think kind of deliberate growth management is a good principle in general. So if we're saying 25 lots per year, maybe 25 isn't necessarily the magic number. Maybe that could go up kind of incrementally. But there definitely needs to be a limitation just to make sure that it's not too congested in terms of the construction of the lots themselves with contractors stepping over each other, and also just to make sure that the timing of all the other services like schools, if that's needed, can be done in a proper manner. So yeah, I'd probably be game to support that as is with the limitation of 25 lots per year, unless maybe 30 is the magic number or whatever. But I think as written looks good to me.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move right along here to Councillor Cathy Deagle-Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess as I listened, Shane, to the presentation, like academically, it all makes sense. So intuitively, though it feels a little different. And to Jordan's point a little bit about how do we keep pace with, the regional plan, all that stuff, we're talking about complete communities. And so how do we keep pace with, if you let go of the growth management policies that are there for Marston Drive, then how do we build a community that doesn't sort of all of a sudden all these lots get built, but there isn't the recreation facility, there isn't the education facility, from acute care, we don't have doctors, we don't have, all of these things that communities need. And I know that's not our job per se, but I do think that if we allow and build all this without the infrastructure, keeping pace or in tandem, making sure that we do that, I am worried about that kind of stuff. And then the only other comment is when I think about what's happening here with Murchison Drive and how they will grow, but then looking at Port Wallace and what's happening at Port Wallace. I know that in terms of what is unique here at Murchison is different than Port Wallace, but I think the theme of building complete communities is similar. So I'm kind of watching both, like I have a foot in both camps, because in my district is Port Wallace. So so it's just maybe a comment, but maybe the question about how does this fit with complete communities? Just a general comment, Shane.
Sure, sure. Through you, what I would suggest is the Murchison Drive Master Plan was initiated under the precept of complete communities.
Okay.
So if one were to go back and look at the report, you would see reference to that and reference to the land uses within the various parcels that, so for example, within the Murchison Drive Master Plan, there should be provision for seniors housing, for mixed office, potentially to house doctors' offices, mixed use development within the two quadrants, well, in one quadrant, a commercial quadrant to the north. So one thing that needs to be understood is this is a pre-approved subdivision, irrespective of what we do with Murchison Drive, with the rest of the master plan. This is a fact of life. So we're not changing that. The outlet of the traffic is just going to the provincial highway. It's not going to local roads. So so when I started, why I'm going on about this is because we know we're in a bit of an advantageous position in that we understand what the population density is in this area, and we can make judgments on future planning in accordance with this. So it actually gives us a bit of a heads up, and it impacts what will go on all of the synchronous, the parcels that are expected to work in this complete community in tandem with the development there. That's why it was brought in and considered. And it's a lot to get your head around. It's not a Port Wallace because of the nature of how they're doing Port Wallace. This is a rural development, but so without trying to, what I'm trying to do is just clarify some of the statements so that there's a clear understanding about what this is. It isn't about, it's nothing we can change within the planning process other than asking the question, should these lots come on now as opposed to 25 per year for the next 8 years? That's really all it is. But there are some advantages to knowing what's there in advance of the planning process. So thank you.
And I could add a little bit to that.
Oh.
Through you, Madam Chair. So what Shane is referring to is phases 2 and 3. So we're right now focused on phase 1. And the reason why it's kind of broken up like that is because, like Shane said, this is a pre-approved subdivision. We know what the traffic impacts are. That study has been done, but the study and the design for phases 2 and 3 that are looking at those complete community aspects, more of those aspects would come later, but it is part of this process. And so we'll be coming back in the future to talk more about those phases. So right now it's just focused on phase 1, which is the pre-approved subdivision. And the only thing that is being asked about is the timeline piece. But the other aspects of complete communities which would tie into phase 1 would come in the next sort of phases of this project.
Okay, good enough. So basically then tonight, we're just looking at this for information purposes and to get our heads around it. And the thing that we have to do before we finish up tonight, and that will be done right at the end of the meeting, is set a date, a secure date for the public information meeting. So we'll be looking at that before before the end of this meeting. So, okay, well, thank you very much, Shane. And I know we'll be seeing lots of you in the next while, and you too, Stephanie. So thanks for the information tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to look at another case, 7.1.3, case number 22732. This is an application by Hekmat Gerard to enable a 19-unit seniors housing development located at 5 and 7 Kingswood Drive in Hammonds Plains. And let me see, who's presenting that? Is that Stephanie?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, somebody forgot to tell me that. Okay, please begin your presentation then, Stephanie.
I'm just waiting for the rights to share my screen.
Andrea, I have enabled you as co-host, so you should be able to start sharing your screen now.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, there we go. Okay, you're good, Stephanie.
Okay, I'm just trying to get everything back up here. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Saloom, and I'm presenting case 22732 this evening, an application for a seniors housing development through the development agreement process for a property off Kingswood Drive and Kenwood Avenue in Hammonds Plains. Hekmat Gerard has applied for a 19-unit townhouse-style seniors development project through the development agreement process at 5 and 7 Kingswood Drive in Hammonds Plains. The site is approximately 3.43 acres. It has about 6.4 meters of frontage on Kingswood Drive and 15.2 meters of frontage on Kenwood Avenue. The site is surrounded by a mix of residential development, low density residential development. There is a seniors housing development off of Woodland Drive adjacent to the property. There's the commercial intersection at Hammonds Plains Road and Kingswood Drive that has some local commercial uses. The Kingswood Elementary School nearby, and Uplands Park, as well as Kingswood Drive Park across the street. This is a view of the site seen from Kingswood Drive. It's currently undeveloped and vegetated. And this is a view of the site from the end of Kenwood Avenue. The property is within the water service area, which means that it can be, any development on that site can be serviced with central water. The property is zoned R1, single unit dwelling, and is designated residential under the Beaverbank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville plan area. The residential designation allows for consideration of senior citizen housing that fills a community need through policy P39 through the development agreement process. The residential designation is generally applied to establish low density residential neighborhoods, but there is policy to consider higher density forms for seniors housing. This application was previously presented to Northwest PAC in September of 2020. So we have come back to show you a revised proposal that really the comparison between what you saw in September last year to now is the access to the development has changed. Originally it was off Kingswood Drive, and today they're presenting or proposing vehicular access off Kenwood Avenue. And the reason for this is because there's more frontage. The property has more frontage on Kenwood Avenue. The original submission showed the driveway on the abutting property because there wasn't sufficient frontage to have it entirely on the subject lands. And it was, in order to do so, the adjacent property owner would have had to be subject to the application as well. And just to resolve that, the developer is now proposing access off of Kenwood Avenue to maintain the driveway entirely on their own property. All the other aspects of the development remain the same as to what was presented to you in September of last year. There's a 19-unit senior citizen housing development proposed in bungalow style 2-bedroom townhouse form. There will be, they are proposing an 800 square foot accessory office for support services, a 900 square foot community room, central courtyard, covered patio, and community garden. These would be amenities proposed for residents of the development. A pedestrian access or walkway between Kenwood Avenue and Kingswood Drive to connect the development to adjacent commercial uses, as well as amenities in the general neighborhood. And the development would be serviced by central water and on-site sewer if it was approved by council. So this is the previous site plan that was shown to you in September of last year. You can see that there's vehicular access proposed towards Kingswood Drive. It's a bit tricky to understand where Kingswood Drive and Kenwood Avenue are on this plan, but I think you'll see the change here where the vehicular access is now proposed off of Kenwood Avenue. So there has been a change in the layout of the development just to accommodate the change in the driveway access. The elevations proposed are the same as what was presented to you in September of 2020. They're proposing 1-story bungalow style townhouses with 2-bedroom units in each townhouse, ranging between 1,252 to 1,255 square feet in the area, with pitch roofs, stone and vinyl siding, using universal design elements such as at-grade entrances and barrier-free building code requirements to accommodate for occupancy of the units by senior citizens. So we did send out a mail out for the previous, the original site plan or original proposal in July of 2020 before we presented that to the PAC in September of last year. But with the revision to the proposal and the revised driveway access, we did send another mail out to residents in June of this year. For that second mail out, we sent out 78 notices. We received more than 16 phone calls and emails. The deadline for feedback was today. So we did get a couple between when I finished the presentation and today. And between June 9th, which was the date that the mail out was sent out, and July 5th, we had 282 unique views of the case website. We got some mixed feedback from the community, meaning that there were some residents that were in full support of the application, and then other residents were very concerned and opposed the changes to the application. The matters that residents expressed support for included additional seniors housing in the area. Some residents expressed that this was filling a need in the community, and it offered opportunities for seniors to interact with the existing neighborhood. Some residents expressed support for amenities proposed within the development for occupants of the development, that there was generally additional supply of residential units in the area if this application was approved, and if these would offer more affordability given if they are smaller units than traditional single unit dwelling. Residents expressed concern for the change in access off Kenwood Avenue. I believe there was correspondence submitted to the committee earlier today that referenced concerns from some residents, a couple of residents, regarding the access. Residents did express that they felt that because the current civic address was listed as 5 and 7 Kingswood Drive, that access should be off Kingswood Drive and not Kenwood Avenue. I felt like the access off Kenwood Avenue would create impact, or it would impact the existing low density residential neighborhood, as well as the intersection of Crestfield and Hammond Plains Road. There was some concern that the development would be changed, would not be occupied by senior citizens, that the density was too high for the area. There was some concerns on impacts if the site, where the site is being serviced with on-site services or on-site sewage, impacts from construction activities to nearby residences, including blasting, and on the Kingswood Elementary School relative to safety of children walking to the school and nearby amenities. At the September 2020 meeting of PAC, PAC recommended that the application be approved as presented. So today we are looking for your feedback on the revised proposal as it relates to the road network and access to the site being changed to Kenwood Avenue, and the changes to the site layout as it relates to the change in access. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And we will go through the list again for questions and comments. Okay, and we'll begin this time with Jacqueline Levere.
Thank you. Stephanie, I'm just wondering, when that concern that they had about senior citizens, if there's a development agreement with the person, because this would be a development agreement, correct? Does it specify, for example, in the development agreement that this will be for senior citizens? And with age?
Yeah, so the definition of senior citizen housing in the land use bylaw is housing designed for occupancy by senior citizens. So a way in which we try to achieve that, we cannot specifically require that a developer or a property owner only leases or sells a lot to a senior citizen. That's considered, that's not something that we can do. However, we can require additional design elements to be included in the development, such as at-grade walkways, lighted areas or well-lit areas, at-grade entrances or sheltered entrances, stuff like that, to ensure that it is accessible, and it does provide for, it is designed for occupancy by senior citizens that may have, that may need those additional services and amenities. So like, for example, there's an office that is being proposed on this site, and additional parking for support services, assuming that there will be a need for additional services to assist residents of the development.
And if I may, do we know when we do a development agreement if they are to be considered housing to be sold or housing to be rented?
No, so we are more concerned about the use, not the how a developer chooses to do either condominium or a lease or like a rental or ownership. We are more focused on the use of the property.
And my last question would be, do you know how many people live on Kenwood Avenue as it stands now?
No, I don't know the exact number. yeah, I don't know the exact number of residents.
Yeah, I'll go look it up I've been trying to see it on my map here on my phone. So I guess the main thing that you got as concern, would that have been traffic from citizens?
Yes, the connection and traffic.
Understanding that it's senior citizens, we could consider perhaps that not everyone would have a car, not everyone would drive out of those 19 households, and we could probably consider too that there wouldn't be 2 cars, for example, or many, but that I guess those are things we can't know, but we can, yeah. So we saw one letter. What was it? Most of the others like emails or phone calls that you got?
Yeah, so there were 2, I believe there were 2 letters that came to, that were submitted to PHC this evening. But in addition to those, I received 16 I think up to this evening, it was 18 letters and phone calls.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Sorry for all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah, where am I here? Okay, Gina. Gina Jones-Wilson, you're next.
My question was actually along the lines of Jacqueline, because yeah, I'm not sure how it works, because it looks like they're kind of were applying under having seniors housing, but then they don't have to have it as senior housing. I think yeah, that kind of makes residents kind of leery, because are you going to end up with, you know, young people in there? You know, I think that's when I think that's where maybe a lot of the issues are, you know, if it's supposed to be seniors housing and they really don't have to put seniors in those housing. So yeah, that's my question. And then why is that even like kind of included in the report or the presentation if it's not something that you guys can actually enforce them to do?
So through Madam Chair to you, Gina, we cannot require, it has to do with like discrimination of tenancy.
Yeah.
So we are unable to, the only thing we can do is focus on the use of the property or the design, how the what services are being added to that development to encourage and really, if it is designed with all these additional services, I guess assumption is that people may not want to pay for those additional services if they don't need it.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea, and like 19 units, I can't see that causing a lot more traffic. And you know, if it's mostly the way it's laid out, it's attractive to seniors. So no, I really don't, and it's part of my area, so I really don't see a problem with it. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Okay, Jordan.
I'm afraid I won't have much to add. I didn't notice too drastic of a difference between the 2 drawings, just because it was mostly the access route that changed. And I recall this in September when we first looked at it. I remember being pretty excited about the proposal. Like, I thought it was a really good idea. Nice thing to have in the community. So my stance at that point was, yeah, sure, that's good. It's needed. Let's do this. So no change there from my perspective. I still think it's a good idea, whichever road they take to go in. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Diggle Gammon, last but not least.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, just a comment to share. Having worked my entire career with people with disabilities, the concept of universal design is something that I wish that every developer had to do. Right? Because whether or not it's ourselves or our family, you want to have company come visit. If you have universal design, then you have barrier-free and universal access. And all of those things are just amazing. You think about not just a senior citizen, but what about, you know, a mom with a stroller and a toddler, and just being able to get where they need to go as easy and as seamless as they can. the principles of universal design, I think we should try to adopt in our planning strategies as much as we can, and even encourage universal design everywhere that we can. So I think that's the same thing, but the same as Jordan, though, the access is different. And when you say like 19 units, and I probably didn't see this in September because it was before my term, but the access is different, but it is a community that is well supported by transit as well, right? So yeah, I really don't see a lot there, but I do understand that the community can be stressed by thinking they have a residential community and they worry about a transient development. Like they're worried about, is this not going to be, sort of people who are going to be long-term stay and all that kind of stuff. So I understand the concern of the community. But once we lack so much of universal design and barrier-free housing, that usually by the time somebody gets it, they want to stay for quite a while. So hopefully that will be good. So the comment, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will sit out of my chair because I do have, I would like to make a comment here, mainly about the access. With so much more frontage on Kingswood, it seems like the whole area is wider on Kingswood than it is on the other street. I know if they're saying the access is narrower, but isn't that part of the design that of the way the buildings are laid out that causes the access to be narrower?
Actually, there's more frontage on Kenwood Avenue than Kingswood Drive. The width of the access is the same as what was proposed in the previous version, but there wasn't sufficient frontage on Kingswood Avenue for it to be entirely on their property. Yeah. So they've switched it to Kenwood, from Kingswood Drive to Kenwood Avenue, because now there's sufficient area on their property.
It's just the drawings are a little confusing because of, you see this big empty area and you see the way the buildings are placed on it. It seems like they have a lot of space on the Kingswood side that they could possibly, if the buildings were changed slightly, relocated slightly, that there might be more space there.
There's really not enough space. And can I share my screen again?
Yeah, please.
Andrea?
Yeah, because
I can show the property boundaries again. You can see.
Yes, Stephanie, you can start sharing again.
Thank you. Okay, so
okay.
I'm pointing to my other screen. I'm looking on the other screen. You can see, so Kingswood Drive is on this side. There's very slender width off of Kingswood Drive. So the driveway width required crosses over. On the previous application, it was actually on top of this lot.
Okay.
And so now with Kenwood Avenue, they have 50 feet of frontage. So there's sufficient width there for the driveway to be entirely on their property and off of Kenwood Avenue.
Yeah, I think what was confusing me was the picture of the lot as it stands now with all the trees on it. It looked like it went right to the edge of Kingswood Drive, and it doesn't. So yeah, that answers my question there. So yeah, that's fine. Other than that, there are lots of design standards. I don't know whether we can include them or not, as far as accessibility and some units being built for wheelchair accessibility, which means lowering countertops and redesigning your kitchens basically to make them easily usable by someone in a wheelchair. I can relate to this because my father used a walker, and he was here with me one time, and his walker wouldn't fit between my bathtub and my sink in my bathroom. which came as quite a shock to us. So we immediately renovated the bathroom so that when we got to that point, we wouldn't have a problem. But yeah, it can be pretty tricky in some layouts for people. And I hope that we would be able to include some of that in the development agreement, and that would pretty much ensure that you would be having either people with disabilities or senior people coming in there. As far as traffic goes, I don't think there's fewer seniors driving cars. They may not always have two anymore, but a lot of them do. The ones that I know. I only have one because there's only me. But if there's two people in the family, there quite often are two cars, and your age doesn't make a difference there. So good, that's all I have to say. So we'll go back then and we'll look at having a motion, and I will ask someone to please make a motion on this subject. So if somebody would care to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, then what is your motion to be, please, Jacqueline?
That the development agreement, that we support the development agreement with the change in the access to Kenwood or the senior housing.
Okay, and can we have a seconder for that, please?
I can second that. Councillor Dingle-Gammon.
Okay, moved by Jacqueline Levert and seconded by Councillor Dingle-Gammon that we accept the changes and recommend approval. All in favor, aye. Contrary minded, nay.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Motion is carried. So thank you very much to the applicants who were with us tonight by phone, I believe. We had Crystal Fuller from Brighter Community Planning and Consulting, and the applicant Hekmat Gerard. And we thank you very much for being here and ask you to hang up your phones now. Thanks. Okay. Onward and upward here. Date of the next meeting, August 4th, 2021. However, between now and then, we have to schedule a date for case number 21639, which is the planning information, the public information meeting for the McCabe Lake project. And we've had two dates suggested: Wednesday, August 18th at 7 p.m. or Wednesday, August 25th at 7 p.m. What we're asking right now is for you to please confirm which date you would be available. I will start with August 18th. And Gina, would you be available on August 18th?
And I'm gonna have to check. I get that many Zoom meetings. So I'm just trying to find my calendar.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Okay. Jordan?
Yes, I'd be available for either date.
Okay. 18th or 25th. Okay. Jacqueline, how's your availability for the 18th or the 25th?
Preferably the 25th. I don't know what the Wi-Fi situation will be in a house. I'm renting in Cape Breton on the 18th, so it's an iffy proposition for the 18th, but if there was good Wi-Fi, I would do my best to be there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gina, how are you doing with your calendar?
It would be the 18th.
The 18th? Okay, Gina, 18th. Okay, so Jordan is good both times. Gina's good on the 18th. Jacqueline would prefer the 25th. Councillor Diggle Gammon, I think you're still on vacation back then, aren't you?
No,
No?
only from the 5th to the 10th of August.
Okay.
So I'm good.
You're
Either
good
date.
for either date? Okay.
But I'm a
Yeah.
little jealous because, you know, I'd rather be in Cape Breton on the 18th, Jacqueline.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm making myself available for either date if I'm willing to book off work if I have to, if I can't, if we can't get a quorum otherwise. And we will have to get in touch with the members who aren't here tonight to check their availability again.
Yes, I will, Madam Chair. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay. And I guess that's it for tonight. If someone would like to make a motion to adjourn.